Every day when I wake up in the morning, I see the sky and I think about the things that you've made. All the beauty and your glory is showing, yeah. It never bores me to look at the ocean. The waves are crashing, the water spraying up in my face. I look above and all the seagulls are soaring, yeah. We've got to overcome the darkness, so we don't get caught in the middle, between the hopeful and the heartless. So, hello, good day, good morning, I just can't stop smiling, because today is a brand new day, and all the darkness and the pain is just fading behind me. Oh Lord, what a beautiful day. All the planets surround me, the way they orbit just boggles my mind, the way the sun keeps on shining, yeah. We've got to overcome the darkness, so we don't get caught in the middle, between the hopeful and the heartless. So, hello, good day, good morning, I just can't stop smiling, because today is a brand new day, and all the darkness and the pain is just fading behind me. Oh Lord, what a beautiful day. There's nothing to fear, it'll be okay. It's the day that the Lord has made. It's the day that the Lord has made. There's nothing to fear, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. It's the day that the Lord has made. That the Lord has made. It's the day that the Lord has made. That the Lord has made. So, hello, good day, good morning, I just can't stop smiling, because today is a brand new day, and all the darkness and the pain is just fading behind me. Oh Lord, what a beautiful day.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Live with Doug. We are thinking through God's Word together, especially today, Romans, and not just Romans, but to Romans chapter 7. Oh yeah, it's going to be fun. Going to be a fun week. Hey, good morning, child of Elohim. Lon says, can't stay, but looking forward to Doug teaching what chapter 7 doesn't say. Heads will probably explode. Yeah, that happens now and then in Romans 7. Good morning, Lewis. Hey, Ken. Good morning, Edgar. Ken says, I always think Gabe should go on America's Got Talent. Yeah, I'll pass that along. He'll be encouraged. Thanks for those words. Hey, Dale. Good morning, Jordan. All right. So, yes, we are in Romans chapter 7. And as you probably know, because you all are so smart and well educated, chapter 7 is a very controversial passage. And the debate rages about whether Paul is speaking in Romans 7 autobiographically as a Christian or as a non-Christian. I say the debate rages. I would say most lean toward Paul claiming to be a Christian. So I'm just going to lay it out. That is not what Romans 7 is about. Paul is not talking about his battle against sin as a Christian in Romans 7. Romans 7 begins with, or do you not know? Right, we've already seen that phrasing. Or do you not know? Are you ignorant? So if you take this as Paul being a Christian, here's how it goes. Chapter 6, Paul says, we are dead to sin. Not dying, not ill, not sick. We are dead to sin. He says we are not slaves to sin. He says, our old man was crucified, not will be crucified, not is being crucified, was crucified, that our body of sin is rendered useless. And he gives the instruction and the command, do not go on presenting your members as slaves to sin. You are not slaves to sin. You are slaves to righteousness. Or do you not know, chapter 7, that you have this battle with the flesh that's never going to be over until you're dead and you're going to lose it a lot and you are helpless and enslaved to sin? That is not what he's saying in chapter 7. Jordan says, well, that escalated quickly. Yep. Might as well just get all the angst out at the beginning. Paul is not changing everything he said in chapter 6 and saying, now actually I want you to believe that you are enslaved to sin just like me. And there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to limp along, battling the sinful nature until you die. That is not what's going on. So again, it begins with this phrase, are you ignorant, brothers? And I don't know why the literal standard version here doesn't translate it literally, because there is an or. The first word is or. In fact, let me pull up the New American Standard, which I used to use. Or, there it is. In fact, let me just check and see ESV. Or do you not know? NIV does not have or. Well, that's no good. King James. Oh, you all can all see me flipping through that. Well, good. King James. Or do you not know? Or, does that indicate I'm starting something brand new? Does that indicate I am changing gears? No. Or do you not know means what I just said, maybe you're ignorant of something. And let me make sure that you understand what I've been saying. Yeah, Ken says it's a debate because people don't read it in context. That is exactly right. Well, we're going to be better than that. We are going to read it in context. And you get this, you can help others see it. We'll talk as we go more about the implications of seeing this incorrectly, but when you think Paul in Romans 7 is describing a Christian's battle with sin, and it's a really, at the end of chapter 7, it's a defeatist mindset. The battle with sin. We are enslaved to sin is what he says. If you think he's talking about a Christian, it doesn't give any hope to overcome temptation. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with men who look at porn a lot, get angry with their wife a lot or their kids, and use Romans 7 to draw some comfort that they're just like Paul. And Paul said this is how it's going to be. We have this sin, this sinful nature in us that just keeps battling us. And I just keep losing. I keep losing. I'm just thankful for the grace of God, but I keep losing. And that is not helpful for someone who is trying to resist temptation to say, oh, Paul couldn't do it either. All right, well, now that I've inflamed some of you, no doubt. Alfred says, debate, tired of debating. I've been debating who the true Israel of God is for a week. Good for you. That's good. All right, so let me remind you of, well, first we're going to go back to the end of chapter 5 so that we catch the broader context. Oops. All right. Chapter 5, verse 18 says this. So then, as through one offense to all men, it is to condemnation. Remember, we talked all through that. Through one offense, through Adam's disobedience, now all men are condemned. And the condemnation in this context is what? Pop quiz. Condemnation that all men are now subject to because of the one offense by Adam is what? And while I'm waiting for you to answer that, I'll finish the sentence. So also, through one declaration of righteousness, it is to all men to justification of life. Yep, Edgar got it. So one offense, Adam's offense, brings death, physical death to all men. So one justification, one declaration, one act of righteousness, maybe we won't go back over all that. All men now, justification of life. So you're declared righteous, and then death is not the end. You will be raised again. For, as through the disobedience of one man, the many were constituted sinners, so also through the obedience of the one, Jesus, will the many be constituted righteous. And the law came in. So you got Adam, you've got Jesus, and in between is Moses, right? The law. The law came in. So everyone's going to die because of Adam. The law comes in, and we would think God gave the law to Israel so they would stop sinning. Paul says, no, the law came in that the offense might abound, that the offense would increase. Now, imagine being a Jew in the Roman audience here, receiving this letter, and the elder is reading it for the whole congregation in Rome, and there are Jews, former Jews there, that they have been trying to persuade these Gentiles to be circumcised and to submit to the law of Moses. And he hears, or they hear, being read by the elder, this letter from Paul where Paul says the law came in so that the offense would increase. That might get their cackles up a little bit. See, if I'm escalating things, I'm just following in the pattern of the Apostle Paul. Right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine the murmuring? What is going on among the congregation as Paul, as his letter says, the law came in so that sin would increase? And he says, where sin abounded, grace hyperabounded, that even as sin reigned in death, so also grace may reign through righteousness to continuous life through Jesus Christ our Lord. And then in chapter 6, he goes on and explains that we're dead to sin and so on. And I wanted to just put up a side-by-side comparison, yeah, there we go, of what we see in chapter 6. On the left column there, and I'll try to read this slowly enough for those of you who are just listening to catch it all. But on the left side there, remember, sin reigns. Since Adam, sin reigns and death reigns. Sin and death, those go together throughout chapter 6 and 7 and 8. Sin and death. Sin leads to death, physical death. Sin reigns, death reigns, right? That's this whole column over here. The old man is alive and well. He has a body of sin. Physical body is a body of sin. Death rules or reigns. He is under law, at least for the Jews. We'll come back to that in a minute. He is enslaved to sin. He is doing things that are lawless and unclean, things of which he should be ashamed, and he bears fruit to death. Remember, all those things are in chapter 6. But he starts off chapter 6 by saying, do you not know this? That was true of you, but if you have been baptized into the Messiah, you died with the Messiah. You were raised with the Messiah. His death is your death. His resurrection is your resurrection. You now walk in newness of life, just like he is physically alive, the Messiah is. So you have a new life of some sort. And that body of sin has been rendered useless. And you are not under law, and you are a slave to righteousness. You are alive to God. You walk in holiness. You are bearing fruit to God. These are two different realms. This is the realm you were in. But when you were baptized into Christ, you were transferred to this realm. Again, see all these things. Newness of life, body of sin useless. You're not under law. You're a slave to righteousness. You walk in holiness. You are bearing fruit to God. Now, if you weren't with us in chapter 6, you need to go back and read chapter 6 carefully and follow through the videos we did and get yourself up to speed on all of that, because you cannot understand Romans 7 if you don't understand Romans 6. So if you're jumping in because the title got your attention or something, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear debates and fighting. I don't want to hear disagreement if you don't have a really good handle on chapter 6. See, this is a problem. We read the writings of men. We read systematic theology. We come to Romans 7 asking the question, because of the debate that rages. We're asking the question, is Paul talking about a Christian or a non-Christian in Romans 7? And to come to the text with that question is missing the point. You're setting yourself up to misread it, because that's not the right question to be asking. All right. Romans 7 begins. Or are you ignorant, brothers? Maybe you don't know this. What's this in response to? Well, look what he said here in verse 21 of chapter 6. What fruit, therefore, were you having then, when you were enslaved to sin? See verse 20? When you were servants of sin. And this is the word slave. When you were a slave to sin, you were free from righteousness. Past tense, when you were. What fruit, therefore, were you having then, when you were a slave to sin? What fruit was the result of you being a slave to sin? In the things of which you are now ashamed. Well, he answers his own question. For the end of those is death. The fruit of your sin, when you were enslaved to sin, is death. You're going to die because of those sins. And you should be ashamed of those things. And now, having been freed from sin, being free is the opposite of being a slave, right? Now you are freed from slavery to sin. You've become slaves to God. You have your fruit. Well, what is your fruit of being a slave to God and being freed from sin? You are being sanctified. That's the fruit. And the end of that is not death. It is continuous life. Why? For the wages of sin is death. What you earn for yourself from your sin is death. The gift of God is continuous life in the Messiah, Jesus our Lord. Or are you ignorant, brothers? Or do you not know? See, he hasn't changed his context at all. Context is king here. And now he tells us who he's talking to. He's giving us the audience. For to those knowing law, I speak. Who's that? Who knows law? Who in his audience? Who in the Roman church knows law? It's the Jews. He's telling us who his audience is. He's telling us who chapter 7 is about or for. It's those who know the law. Do you see that? He says it up front. This is who I'm writing for. Are you ignorant, brothers? Are you my brothers who know the law? Maybe you don't know what I'm about to say. This has to frame your understanding of chapter 7. He's writing for the Jews here. Well, do you not know this, my brothers, that the law has lordship over the man as long as he lives? Now, this word lordship or master, it's a form of the word, it's a verb form of the word kurios, which is the word for Lord. Everywhere in the New Testament, the word for Lord is kurios. This is the verb form of that. Lordship. That's why the literal version here translates it lordship, or mastery. Lord, master, similar. He has talked about mastery or lordship already. Back in chapter 6, verse 9, he said, knowing that Christ, having been raised up out of the dead, dies no more, death has no more lordship over him. So Jesus came and submitted himself to the mastery of death, or the lordship of death, but now that he has raised from the dead, death is not his master anymore. And then verse 14, he says, sin will not have lordship over you. Why? For you are not under law, but under grace. Remember, we talked about this. The law came in so that you would sin more, or the Jews would sin more. And he says here, you're not going to be under the lordship of sin because you're not under law. You're under grace. Same word here, mastery, lordship. So now he's saying to his Jewish brothers, or are you ignorant of this? The law has lordship over a man as long as he lives. Are you alive? Mr. Jew, Mr. Jewish brother? If you're alive, then the law has lordship over you, which is just going to cause you to sin. Right? If you're alive, you're under the law. And that means sin is your master. It's going to increase your sin. And then he gives an illustration to show what it means to be alive under the law. Don't think here now the law of Moses. This illustration is not about the law of Moses per se. For the married woman to the living husband has been bound by law. Right? So if a woman is married to a man, then the law would say to her, you're obligated to be faithful to him, and vice versa. Right? If the husband may die, she has been free from the law of the husband. Right? So see how he's doing? He's illustrating that as long as the person is alive, the law is in force and you're under the law. So a woman's married to a man, and as long as they're both living, they're under the law. But if the husband may die, she's free. There's no more law binding the woman to the man if he's dead. Do you see the connection? This is not hard, right? Law has jurisdiction as long as you're alive. But the husband dies, now the woman is free from that law. So then, the husband being alive, she shall be called an adulteress if she may become another man's. So a woman is under the law with respect to her husband, and he's still alive, so she joins to another man, she's an adulteress. But if the husband may die, she's free from the law. So as not to be an adulteress, having become another man's. Now again, the literal version here is not terribly readable, but you get the point, right? She's bound by the law of marriage as long as her husband is alive. If he dies, she's free from that law. And now she can marry another man, and she won't be committing adultery. Now, this gets a little confusing because the point is, if he was consistent in his analogy, you would expect the wife dying to illustrate freedom from the law. However, that wouldn't work with the point he's making. So it's the husband who dies. Do you see? I don't want to confuse you if it's clear, but for some people get tripped up on that because you would expect the wife to be the one dying when it talks about dying to the law. All right, but the point is clear, right? As long as you're alive, the law has jurisdiction. In a marriage relationship, if your spouse dies, you are no longer bound by the law to your obligation to that spouse because the spouse is dead, and you can join to another and not be committing adultery. Everybody's clear on that, right? Child of Elohim says, so if you enter into a covenant, you are bound to that covenant until death. Well, if the covenant terms are until death, which a marriage covenant is, then that is true. Now, there are exceptions like for adultery, but we'll save that discussion for another time. All right, so everybody's clear. Paul's point is, if you're alive and there is a law applied to you, the law has jurisdiction as long as you're alive, assuming those are the terms of the covenant, the law. So that, my brothers, you also were made dead to the law. Who are the brothers? Who are the brothers here in verse 4? Who is he writing to in chapter 7? The Jewish converts, right? You, my brothers, were made dead to the law. Now think about that statement. He's got Jews in the audience. He's writing to the church in Rome, and he knows there are Jews there, and he's saying, my brothers, if you're alive, then the law has jurisdiction over you. But you're not alive. You're dead. Now, where have we heard Paul talk about dying? Chapter 6. When you were baptized into Christ, you were baptized into his death, and you died to sin. Do you see what Paul's doing here? He's simply applying what he stated in chapter 6 to the Jews. My brothers, you were made dead to the law. How? Through the body of the Messiah. You were baptized into Christ. You died with Christ, and that death means you are dead to the law. Remember we talked about this, that the jurisdiction, the realm that in Adam you're in this realm of sin and death, but when you were baptized into Christ, you died to that realm and you were raised to this other realm of resurrection and life and freedom and all that. Now he's applying the same thing and the same imagery. The Jew was born under the law. And as long as he's alive, he's under that law. But just like the Romans died to the realm of sin when they were baptized into Christ, so the Jews died to the realm of the law when they were baptized into Christ. For your becoming another's, just like the wife could join another man if her first husband's dead, so these Jews became another's. Whose? Jesus's. They died and they were joined to another. He who is raised up from the dead, that's Jesus. Why? That we might bear fruit to God. The law came in to increase sin. When they were under the law, they were enslaved to sin. But they died. The Jews died. Those who believed in Jesus, they died. Being dead, they are no longer under the law's jurisdiction. So now they're joined to Christ, the one who's raised up from the dead, and now they can bear fruit to God. Because they're not under the law. They're dead to the realm of sin and death and law. They are raised just like the man in chapter 6 is raised. And now they can bear fruit to God. They were bearing fruit to death so long as they were under the law, because the law aroused sin in them. But they're dead to that realm. They're dead to the law. They're no longer under the law. For when we were in the flesh, what tense is that? That is past tense, right? When we Jews, he's still talking to the Jews here, and he's one of them. When we were in the flesh, the passions of sins that are through the law were working in our members to bear fruit to death. And now we have ceased from the law, that being dead in which we were held, so that we may serve in newness of spirit and not in oldness of the letter. All right, we'll come back and talk about verses 5 and 6 more tomorrow. I just wanted to lay this out. Let me catch a couple of your comments, and then we will call it a day. Alfred says, our body belongs to another. Yeah, to Jesus. Exactly. Peter says, is it not the case that they are now free from the law because the husband of the covenant died? So in that analogy, the woman would be the Jew. So Jesus is the husband. If that's the case, Peter, then who does the Jew marry? Because his application is not that the husband dies. The illustration is that the husband dies, but the application to the Romans here is not that the husband dies, but that they die. I don't see how that fits with the phrasing. Now I see somebody would say that, why somebody would say that, because they're trying to make the illustration fit perfectly, but I don't think it works either way. I don't think the illustration fits parallelly. I don't think it fits in parallel either way. Child of Elohim says, I've heard that too. The text seems to have them being the ones who died to the law. Yeah, it doesn't have the husband dying. It has the people who were under the law dying. What am I missing, Peter? If it's okay, the husband is alive, but the husband dies. So if this is Jesus, so the Jews are joined to Jesus and he dies, but in the illustration, the wife doesn't die. But in the application, you all were the ones who died. So I don't see it. I don't see how the husband of the covenant. Maybe. Let me give this some more thought, but I don't see it. Amy says, Jesus fulfills the covenant in his death. The Jews can marry into the new covenant of the risen Jesus. Jesus fulfills the old covenant. Yeah, I would say we're pressing the illustration too far. I think he's here in verse 3 simply illustrating that death breaks the covenant, and then he switches back to his point. I think that's what's going on. I don't think it's intended to be a brief allegory here. So that's what makes most sense to me anyway. I think if I'm understanding Peter and the interaction here, I think we get to the same place. So I don't know that there's a significance to the question. It seems to me like he's just giving a quick illustration to get to his broader point. I don't think we're supposed to take it allegorically. But anyway, well, it's worth thinking about. Appreciate the comment. All right. So keep it in context. He's talking to Jews, and think about the significant thing he just said. Jews are dead to the law in Christ. That's good news. That means they're free from sin, as he will go on to illustrate and teach. We'll come back tomorrow. Keep working our way through it. Keep reading, keep studying, keep thinking, and prepare yourself to have this dialogue with someone else, because you will, and you need to know what the text says. All right, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.